Hello. Okay, welcome back to our penultimate live stage. This one's about targeting your online advertising and how you know if it's really working. With more online car sales channels than ever before, how do dealers know that they're doing the best job online for their business? And what should dealers be thinking about the most when it comes to promoting their business and stock online? Is there any real way to track the results? Well, my expert panel will help me reveal all. Please welcome them to the stage. Hello, right, some introductions. To my left, first we've got Adnan Ebrahim, who's the founder and CEO of CarThrottle. He set up the company in 2009, having realized that there was no online digital platform for millennial car enthusiasts, and has since developed the business to offer all manner of different products, which I'm sure he'll tell us about momentarily. We've got Diego Sanson, who is Vice President of International Business Development at CarGurus. The car sales portal has soared in popularity in the States, overtaking Auto Trader, and it's approaching critical mass here in the UK. Then we've got Shelley. She's the Managing Director of Sticky Content. It's a full-service digital content and social agency. She used to be a journalist, so she understands what content is and how it can help consumers help your business. And finally, at the end there, we've got Lee Williams. He's got more than 20 years' experience in automotive digital media and has recently set up a company called Vertical Intelligence, a video and native advertising platform. So welcome all. Thank you very much for giving up your time. Now, firstly, you all come at this in very different ways with different levels of experience and experience in different fields. What would you say is your tips for car dealers wanting to improve their online advertising? What should they do? Adnan, let's start with you.
So, firstly, I guess it depends on who they are, who they're targeting, their stock. For us, we work with a lot of brands, predominantly OEMs, who are looking to reach a slightly different kind of audience. For us, we're very much geared towards the social audience, so people that spend a lot of time in their mobile feeds. As we know now, that's everyone spending, I think the stat is 4 to 5 hours a day looking at their mobile screens, which is both brilliant and really depressing. So we target those people where they are, which is across Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Really the top tips, I think, are how to measure that performance. We work with brands across their different stages of the funnel, whether it's awareness of either the brand, the dealership, or the products that they're selling, all the way through to now starting to look at lead generation, and test drive requests. The beauty about those online social platforms is that everything can be tracked. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've managed to see, that not only can you track everything, but also the products that you can use are a lot more advanced. So we do a lot of video-based advertising, and by the metrics, video has a click-through rate of 1.8% versus display, which is now 0.05%, which was Google's DoubleClick's latest announcement. So there's a lot of opportunity for us kind of in social, and for those dealers, it's about how do you use those products in the best way, and there's a lot of different ways of going about that.
You've built your platform on a fantastic social following. I mean, perhaps you give the audience some of the incredible figures you've got, and also explain to them whether they can use the same techniques in their business to improve their advertising online.
Yeah, so across our brands, so we have a brand, CarThrottle, which is in the enthusiast sector, and a motorsport brand called WTF1. We have 13 million followers, and we do 300 million monthly video views, which sounds like a lot. But that's essentially the biggest thing that we've learned is around content strategy. And actually, it's something that everyone can implement within their businesses, within the dealer groups. How do you create regular content that keeps people coming back for more? Whether it's content about the latest stock that you've just got into the showrooms, whether it's test drives, whether it's 360-degree walk-around videos. We like to bring in entertainment and humor into that mix as well, which makes our content the most engaging, actually, in the world from a online media point of view.
And is it video where it's all out for you?
For us, video is huge. We've been set up to do video since 2009, and we spend and invest a lot of money in video. But here's the thing, video doesn't have to be expensive. Nowadays, if you look at Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds, some of those most viral videos that you view have been shot on mobile phones. So actually, we're big advocates of saying it's all about the content. Find content that resonates with users in the first 5 to 10 seconds and get them started on that journey where they're then watching 1, 2, 3 minutes worth of your content.
Thank you. Diego, how can dealers improve their online advertising in?
I'll give you a shameless American answer. The first thing is put all your ads on CarGurus.
Enough of that.
No, just joking about that. But I think if you think about our trajectory and success has been really predicated on the whole idea of transparency for the consumer. So I think from our perspective, I would urge dealers really to think about that, with the amount of access to information that consumers have today, right? By the time they're coming to you, they're well versed, right? So I think the aspect of being as transparent as possible in a way that you present not only the cars that you're selling, right, but also your business as well, I think is a key factor to not only automotive retailing, but I would argue to say any sort of digital retailing that's out there. So it's something that it's at the core DNA of what we do, but certainly we know that it's something that every consumer, regardless of where we go in the world, is certainly yearning, particularly when it comes to car shopping.
Thank you. Emily, perhaps you could help explain what native advertising means and, and how the dealers in the audience can use it.
Well, I'll just sort of echo some of the things that fellow panelists have said about focusing on the content. And I think so often when we're looking at attribution and whether our advertising is working or not, we focus on the buy and we focus on the data and we neglect to look at our actual creative and the messages we were using. So I think that's really important. I think as well, focusing on the entire funnel. So when you're only looking at classifies, when you're only pushing stock and it's all on price, you're in this kind of race to the bottom. And you're not able to differentiate the value that you can add as a dealership over and above anyone else. So one of the ways to do that is to look further up the funnel and to try and build a kind of story and a picture about what it is that you offer in terms of service. So native advertising is advertising that looks and feels like the editorial within a publisher's site. You may have seen it as sponsored content or branded content. So that's something that we do an awful lot of for our clients. One of the great things about native is it's a sit-back experience. So the user is in a kind of being entertained, being informed kind of mode. They're not in a sit-forward, rush mode. So it has much higher engagement rates, much higher click-through rates. It's more expensive. And I think that's the other kind of top tip about online advertising. We know this about cars. You get what you pay for, and yet we always expect to get the best deal for the cheapest price when it comes to kind of online advertising, and the same rules apply. You get what you pay for. So I think certainly one of the benefits of native as well is working with a publisher that you have selected, where you know the audience, where you can trust their analytics and their data. So yeah, those would be my thoughts on it.
Have you got any examples of anybody in the automotive space that's doing it really well, and perhaps any brands you've dealt with?
Well, I think not that I've dealt with personally, but I think Volvo's very well known for a lot of the partnerships it does in the States around native, has done some really successful campaigns. BMW as well, with its latest kind of video series, was a big native success. So certainly the manufacturers. Native can happen at a local level too, so it's not just great big kind of campaigns from the OEMs. It can happen at a local level. I think that's where some of the advantages are, because you can work with publishers direct locally to look at telling your story in a more engaging way, and actually approach the journalists there or the editorial staff there to really make sure that they are making something engaging for you. So you often haven't got the same creative spend as well.
Thank you. Lee, native is quite a different way of doing things. I mean, do you think that's something that dealers should be investing in these days, or is it typical PPC is where all the budget should be going?
Look, the car dealership has to drive traffic to its own website and its own business. And for the last 20 years, we've been using great products like Auto Trader, PistonHeads, and great rivals coming up now like CarSniff and CarGurus. I've run 2 of those businesses. And you've got to get the client to you. And now with native advertising and video advertising, both on the web and via social, and Adnan does an amazing job at that, you can now get your message across, and you can target by location, you can target by makes and models. You can get yourself out there. It's a 20-year-old change happening right now, and you've got the opportunity to start telling the stories about why your dealership is phenomenal, why your service is great, and this is the time. And when you start tracking these things, most importantly, back into your analytics systems, you will see audience and traffic coming through. We've got loads of case studies of dealer groups and dealers now seeing traffic from native and video that is beating PPC. So don't let Google and all these .com players have all the advertising and all your data. Now's the time for you to take control and get customers to you, so you control it and you capture the data.
Thank you. Adnan, you do quite a bit of native advertising on your site. Have you got any examples of any brands that have done fantastic things with you that have worked?
Yeah, I mean, one of our most recent branded campaigns was with Nissan. They came to us looking to essentially sell more GTRs. And I think 6 years ago, if someone would have said, oh, can you shift a £90,000 car on social media, the answer would have been a resounding no. But as Lee said, with the rise of better targeting products, you can go really tight on exactly who your target market is. So for example, for us, we were targeting people in certain areas of the UK, people that fit a certain demographic profile. And then you're able to really use the breadth of content. And it's about the funnel, like one of the other panelists said. You've got obviously awareness at the top, and then it goes right down to obviously intent purchase and getting people onto those test drives. So there are a lot of brands now starting to do it in a very smart way, but it's just the beginning. And I think actually for a lot of the dealer groups that are out there, from what we've seen, having now started to work with a few of them, there's so much room for growth. And I think social has become one of those things that people put to one side because it's quite scary and there's some big numbers involved and you're talking about millions and, the budgets can be phenomenal. So I think there's a lot of people going, well, actually, I'm not sure if we want to get our toes dipped in the water yet. But having said that, I think with the scale that we have, and then obviously the opportunity is actually around GDPR. I mean, I don't imagine anyone here is particularly enthralled about GDPR, but actually I think it's an opportunity because we're now in control and we as consumers have control over where our data goes. But it actually means that there are a lot more opportunities where before you would have just plunked up a Facebook ad. That's probably going to not be as effective now. You have to get a lot smarter about how you are creating content-based adverts and how you're distributing those to an audience.
And what did that Nissan campaign look like? Was it video or was it written content?
It was all video. So we created 5-6 different assets and drove hundreds of test drive requests for Nissan. I think in total we did 2.5 million branded video views for Nissan for that GTR product. And it's something for them that obviously it's just around that market awareness and you're then driving them through to an action.
Okay, thank you. Diego, where should dealers be spending most of their money to generate the most sales?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think we've been talking about this actually in some of the workshops and stuff, is really sort of to say, really getting to having a diversified basket of different investments to drive traffic for different purposes. I think that's a key aspect. I think that the way that you're going to attract someone to buy a Ford Fiesta is going to be totally different than it would to be a Ferrari. So I don't think you can view this sort of as like, one sort of silver bullet that fits everything. So the key to me is being able to look and say, okay, how do you go from this sort of funnel of everybody in the market to being as specific and targeted as possible? From our perspective, where we see, a lot of dealer interest, certainly from PPC and SEM, to the point where we've actually, helping dealers in doing that based on our own experience. Retargeting as well too through social media, another sort of key factor where it goes. But honestly, for me, before you go out and do all that other stuff, you really have to also first invest in being able to have the systems in place and the targeting in place and the ability to then say, before you go out and spend all that money, do you have the basics in place to be able to track all of this back, right? Because I think that when you go from the ad world to the dealer world, if it's not as sophisticated, that gap is huge, right? So before even making an investment, looking at your infrastructure to say, do I have the basics in place to be even able to gauge where I'm going to put that money?
Thank you. Emily, where should dealers be spending most of their money to get the most return, do you think?
I think it depends on what return you're looking for, and I think so much goes wrong because people don't actually set a really clear strategy of what they want to achieve from various different kinds of activity. I don't think you have to spend a great deal of money to get much of a return with social advertising, for example. You can start with £5 if you want to. I think it all comes back to, I always think a little bit of big data is a dangerous thing, because I sort of take issue a little bit with hyper-targeting, because it's this idea that you can remove wastage entirely. But I always think the more targeted you get, you have to think about all of the audiences you're then ignoring. And to a certain extent, that you're then meeting your competitors on a level playing field because you're all hyper-targeting the same people who are in market in your area. And actually pull yourself back up a little bit, widen things out, accept a certain level of wastage, but try and meet people maybe before they start that buying journey. Retargeting, I think, is something really worth looking at, because particularly when you're really, really targeting, you're down to actually quite a small group of people, and you really need to be careful on the amount of frequency that you set with retargeting, because the annoyance factor is really quite high. And while you're chasing that one particular sale, you may have pissed them off so much they never ever want to come near you again. So, this is the danger with this idea that you can track absolutely everything. We become so obsessed with the attribution that we forget about the fact we're actually trying to give people a really positive customer experience and get them to come to us. So I think it's kind of, you've got to play around with that, really. I think not abandoning your common sense. So yes, you can look at a million different spreadsheets and dashboards, but the chances are most people in your company will know to a certain extent why people come to you, what sells, what doesn't sell, and keep that in mind as well when you're making a buy.
Thank you. Lee?
The other thing you've got to consider is about your brand, your business being discovered. So we talked about Google as a search solution, PPC. The marketplaces, you know how they work. You have to be found amongst the raft of cars listed. How are you being discovered when people are reading about car content, car reviews? Are you in their eyeball? Are you flowing through? Just like in the old days, you ran radio, TV, posters, billboards, trying to capture someone's attention as they were passing your location. You can now do that with the native and video solutions. It's basically just like Facebook, pictures, text, a bit of video. This is the car industry. There's a lot of great video out there, and you can make great video too, as we heard earlier. You've got to get yourself discovered. Be different. You want to be different than the guy next door to you and the competitor in the other city. You've got to start trying these new techniques. They exist, and the ones that do will be the ones that get competitive advantage. So love to speak to you after this and give you some ideas on how we can help you do that.
Adnan, have you got any brands that you really admire that are doing online advertising brilliantly in the automotive space, be that dealers or manufacturers?
Oh, good question. From a manufacturer point of view, I think there are a couple of brands that we've seen now that are starting to really engage. Obviously, we look at mostly the social end of the market. In that area, Mercedes-Benz continues to spend a lot of money, not just on amplification of their sponsorships that they're doing, but obviously heading into performance marketing territory. Having said that, most of the German manufacturers are doing that as well. I think BMW ordinarily were actually at the forefront of that 4, 5, 6 years ago when it comes to a social point of view. From a dealer point of view, we're seeing a lot of the independents actually embrace social because they have the flexibility to experiment and test. And actually, fundamentally, that is the core of social. It's such a quick, fast-paced market that you can have results within 12 to 24 hours, where traditionally it would take 20, 30, 40 days lead time to start seeing results from those campaigns. So actually one of the biggest lessons learned, I think, for a lot of brands is agility, and having agility within your organization. Can you react and respond to the market quickly enough to take advantage of things that are going on? And a lot of brands are now starting to do that, and it's just a case of share of voice, and are they creating messaging that's actually getting through and cutting through the noise versus traditional. We always say this, especially from a PR point of view, I guess, and press, which is both of our backgrounds. You can have that shot of a car twisting on a mountain road, and you've got that traditional three-quarter shot, which everyone thinks is the best shot to sell with. But actually, people want a lot more of a raw engagement with the car, and we're talking about something that's emotive. You can hear it, and it's something that should be communicated visually and via as many senses as possible. So that's the opportunity, and it's whether people are set up to take advantage of that, and whether they're agile enough to be able to go and attack and experiment.
Thank you. Diego, any brands or dealers that you do business with that you really admire?
I think from our perspective, we're lucky that we see this in more than one market, right? So we see this in the United States, we see it here in the UK, Germany and Italy and different places, and we're starting to see much more of the dealers, particularly as well too, being able to, as Lee said, looking at how they can really kind of come out and do things differently. So in the US, we've worked a lot with like Carvanas of Rooms of the World and stuff, where they were sort of reinventing even the model itself, right? But I think even some of their employees and things are really sort of adding to that experience, right? From the car shopping perspective. And we see here as well too in the UK, a lot of the dealers we work with and stuff going beyond this. A lot of people here, and I think it's been quite effective, is working on sort of meshing that offline and online world, right? So a lot of people that are driving people to interact with their brand and also their cars and so forth. So we certainly see a variety of different approaches.
Thank you. Emily, any brands you admire in the automotive space?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of a big example and a very small example. So I really like the short film that BMW did around the someday rule, which I think was just a really great piece of storytelling. And then on a really kind of prosaic level, where I live in Oxfordshire, I'm targeted by a couple of my local dealers, and they obviously know me quite well because they talk about the fact I can get a free cup of coffee and there's somewhere for my kids to play, and they have a ball pit. So those kind of things, that obviously is me, and that's a big deciding factor in where I go. So they seem to have their data pretty well sewn up. Thank you.
Lee?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. The car manufacturers are all heavily investing in this area. But more interesting enough is what a dealer's doing. And there's some good examples there. We see a lot people who are now pushing their weekend events in particular, trying again to grab people to the location rather than just selling this particular car. Of course, that actually works, but trying to use the emotive parts of the dealership and the service to bring people through. And I think that's going to be the massive growth area from just seeing, here's another car, here's an APR, come and see it. Most people here have got an angle in their business, and this is the kind of medium that allows you to communicate that.
Okay, thank you. That's fortunately all we've got time for. In 5 minutes' time, we're going to have our expert panel. It's the future of the automotive industry with Mike Halls from the SMMT, Jamie Hicks, who's the Managing Director of Jaguar Land Rover, Richard Jones from Black Horse, and Nigel McMinn from Lookers Group. So join me back here in a couple of minutes for that. And please put your hands together for this panel.